Things bosses can't do. Hi, I'm Angie. Thanks for joining me here at Life Squared.
Welcome to Life Squared, brought to you by the Perfectly Imperfect Network, from imperfect folk everywhere.
Things bosses can't do. We're starting a new workplace series. There is, at this point, I believe, 10 videos that will be showing up over the next few weeks, one at a time. So you're going to want to subscribe so that you can watch all these videos. We don't want this series to be considered negative. We just know that knowledge is empowering, and the workplace is responsible for a lot of issues in people's lives. So if you're a boss, if you have a boss, if you're both, a lot of bosses have bosses, we want you to watch these videos and take it to heart. Know what you can and can't do. Because, again, knowledge is empowering. We suggest that if you have 50 employees, say 50 to 100, you consider getting a part-time HR person. If you have 100 or more, consider a full-time person. It's going to save you money in the long run. It's going to be that liaison between the bosses and the employees, and they're going to help keep you in compliance. We learned that a lot of people didn't want to go back to work after the COVID crisis. And part of the reason why is they felt like they weren't being treated well in the workplace. This series is dedicated to those people because people feel better when they're working. They feel better about themselves. They feel better about their families. Their mental health is more secure as long as they're not being mistreated at the workplace. So let's talk about these. We have 14 things that bosses can't do. Number one, they can't fail to address a hostile workplace. Now, if they know things like discrimination, sexual abuse, anything that creates a hostile environment, cliques, teasing, whatever you want to call it, bullying, they cannot fail to address it once they know about it. I realize there are a lot of bosses that will hide in an office so they don't have to know about the hostile workplace. Doesn't really pass muster. If you're a boss, you got to get out there, you got to know, and you got to listen to your employees. Because it will come back to bite you, both financially and production-wise. And pretty soon you will be labeled a place not to work. I mean, even Glassdoor rates places to work. Number two, they cannot discipline you for complaining about work on social media. Oh my goodness. Who knew? Because a lot of companies believe they can dictate what you put on social media. Now, they can have clauses in contracts, but technically they cannot discipline you for complaining about your job on social media. This is true in the United States. There are very few states that have that override this rule. But if you live in another country or, you live in a specific state, you may want to check on these rules, these laws. Number three, they cannot retaliate against whistleblowers. If someone comes and tells you something and you're a boss and you don't want to know it, tough. You cannot retaliate against the person that told you. You can't shun them. You can't ghost them. You can't fire them. And I will tell you the EEOC is really serious about protecting whistleblowers. Number four, you cannot paper a personnel file to fire someone. You can't go in and say, well, I just really want them gone, so I'm going to put stuff in their file that looks like they've had a bad work history. No. That's a lot of times the same as retaliating against a whistleblower. Number five, they cannot allow you to work off the clock. Now, there's some provisions on this, but please check it off. Don't think that you can just let any employee work anytime they want. And on the reverse side, you can't just make them. You have to pay them. You have to. If you have an employee that is working at different hours than another comparable employee, you've got to make concessions. You've got to give them something extra, and it has to be recordable. Number 6, you cannot discriminate against workers. You cannot discriminate for age, culture, religion, disabilities, mental health. Come on. This is 2022. You should know that by now. If there's one thing we learned after the Me Too movement was we learned about employment laws. If you are someone that decided not to learn about it and you are in charge of employees, shame on you. Get out there and learn the rules or get yourself an HR person. Number 7, you can't promise jobs to interns that work for free. Why? Because that's been abused. They have these interns come in that aren't getting paid, and in order to control them, they promise them jobs that may or may not ever happen. But what they do is they use it to overwork the interns that are working for free. Number 8, you can't ask prohibitive application questions or interview questions. I will tell you that most companies know that and have at least learned to abide by that law. Number 9 is another surprising one. Forbid salary discussions. You can't forbid people to talk about their salary. For one thing, forbidding it suggests you're doing something wrong, which could be what we found recently in the recent past is, for example, paying men more than women, or paying some employees for no reason more than other employees. Can't do it. You can't forbid those conversations. Number 10, you can't classify a person as an independent contractor and then treat them like an employee. I have seen lots of those cases go down because they will try to classify someone as an independent contractor so they don't have to pay Social Security, Medicare, 401k, whatever. And they also use it to work the people to death. I've seen, especially in the 90s, labor relations, the EEOC really cracked down on that and fined a lot of companies and made sure a lot of employees got what was coming to them. Number 11, you cannot decide not to pay overtime. Don't get to do that. You work somebody overtime, you got to pay. So decide whether it's worth it or not. Number 12, you can't pay or use wage discrimination. A lot of companies have paid some landmark decisions have came out of the courtrooms and about paying men more than women, paying some people more than others for the same job. Can't do it. Don't do it. Bad idea. It's going to cost you a lot of money. Number 13, you can't ignore vaccine exemptions. There are some people that honestly cannot take vaccines. I've got one of my children that can't. And it's sad. We wish he could. This is not about, we don't want vaccines. But if someone truly has a vaccine exemption from a doctor, you cannot ignore it. The idea is that if everybody that can get the vaccine gets the vaccine, those people should be okay. They're not the same as people that are just not wanting to take vaccine. I do believe people should be able to take vaccines if they want to. They should have control over that. How an employer handles that, it just depends. But you cannot ignore exemptions. Number 14, you can't require broad non-competes. I think most people know that by now because it has been in the courtroom over and over again. You can't keep someone from making a living the way they know how to make a living. Really hope these 14 things help you become a more compliant workplace. I hope that employees will hold you to those standards because they have the right to do so. And we would like to thank you for joining us here at Life Squared and have a super great day.
We really appreciate you joining us today at Life Squared on the Perfectly Imperfect Network. To get more content, please consider subscribing. If you have any questions or feedback, we'd love to hear from you in the comments section. Thanks for watching.